What if the most decisive turning points in war are nearly invisible? The conflict in Ukraine is rewriting what we thought we knew about how battles are won and lost. While headlines spotlight roaring offensives and dramatic explosions, a colder, more methodical struggle is quietly reshaping the Eastern Front. For more than a year, the fighting in the Donbas, near Pokrovsk, and along other key axes has been defined by slow-motion attrition, not by sweeping maneuvers. Ukrainian garrisons, once considered impregnable, now find themselves surrounded, relying on fleets of drones just to ferry basic supplies across lethal terrain. There are no epic charges, no cinematic flanking moves, only Russian forces recalibrating, tightening their grip through stealth and patience. Each week, the pressure ratchets up, almost imperceptibly, with little for the cameras to capture. Maps barely shift, but with every sunrise, the defenders' options shrink. Beneath this apparent stalemate, a campaign of targeted destruction is unfolding with chilling precision. Rail lines, power plants, and vital logistics hubs are being systematically demolished. Each blackout, each shattered rail yard, each ruined depot chips away at Ukraine's ability to reinforce, leaving entire brigades cut off, factories silenced, and supply lines frayed to the breaking point. But the evolution does not end there. Emerging technologies, such as nuclear-powered cruise missiles capable of lurking unseen for days, are now part of the arsenal. Their silent presence alters the rules, casting a long, ominous shadow, not only over Ukraine, but over the future of warfare itself. If we fail to grasp how the art of war is shifting, if we cling to old images of dramatic breakthroughs and ignore the power of strangulation, disruption, and relentless attrition, we risk misreading who is truly winning and who will shape the next era of global order. That blind spot could leave entire societies vulnerable to shocks they never saw coming. Let us examine why these subtle, almost silent tactics could matter far more than the headline-grabbing clashes. We will start by tracing how the tempo of battle has slowed and why every inch of ground now comes at an outsized cost. Then, we will follow the hidden campaign that is sapping Ukraine's strength far from the front lines. Forget last year's maps. In today's Ukraine, the front lines no longer leap by kilometers. They creep forward by inches, shaped by what fits in a rucksack, what a drone can carry, or what vanishes beneath the mud. War here is not about colorful arrows or sweeping maneuvers. It is about supply lines, relentless attrition, and the silent contest of innovation. In the Donbas and around Pokrovsk, Ukrainian troops are being squeezed tighter each week. Russian maneuvers are closing in, leaving only treacherous, muddy footpaths and risky drone supply drops as lifelines. The days of truck convoys and armored columns are gone. Now, soldiers haul crates of ammunition through muck, while quadcopters buzz above, sometimes bringing precious supplies, sometimes hunting for men below. Every Russian advance is small, sometimes just a few hundred meters. Yet, these minor gains add up. Each seized crossroads or fortified house tips the scales further. Repeated, these tiny tactical victories morph into a slow, grinding suffocation. But the true war is not only for ground. The fiercest battles are for rail hubs, power stations, and munitions depots, the arteries that keep armies alive. Chernigov, for example, makes headlines daily by design. Russian strikes zero in on infrastructure, smashing power grids, igniting fuel stores, and crippling railway lines. Each attack brings instant blackouts, factories fall silent, trains stop, and the machinery of war begins to sputter. This strategy is not limited to one city. Both Kharkov and Chernigov face escalating Russian focus, with Chernigov singled out for its vital infrastructure and its direct route toward Kyiv. Control here is not just symbolic, it is about keeping open, or slamming shut, the fastest road to Ukraine's heart. Meanwhile, autumn rains have turned the battlefield into a swamp. Fields are impassable, roads dissolve into mud, and even tanks get stuck fast. In this mire, technology becomes king. The side that adapts, fielding lighter drones, automating supply drops, dispatching rapid repair crews, wins the edge. Microchips, batteries, and mud-caked boots are rewriting the rules of war. Miss this shift, and you miss the engine behind today's conflict. This is not about dramatic breakthroughs, but about who can keep the power on, who can move shells to the front, and who can endure when the world turns to sludge. To predict what comes next, you must see these hidden engines, because without them, every forecast is only a guess. But what does this new kind of war feel like from inside the trenches? The answer lies in the daily rhythms and dangers of those fighting to survive on Ukraine's exhausted front. What if, on the modern battlefield, victory no longer belongs to the boldest, but to those who endure the longest and wield the sharpest technology? The age of singular heroics is fading. Battles are no longer won by a lone charge or brief firefight. Instead, both sides are trapped in a grueling contest of attrition, where the greatest struggle is not simply against the enemy, but against exhaustion, hunger, and the endless pressure of weeks that stretch into months. Above, drones fill the skies, not just ferrying supplies, but also surveilling every inch, making rest itself a calculated risk. At night, invisible electronic warfare quietly rages. Supply lines are severed, signals jammed, and isolated soldiers count rations, never certain if tomorrow brings relief or only deeper scarcity. Russian commanders now mirror the tactics Ukraine once used, spreading enemy forces thin, threatening many fronts, and forcing hard choices. Defend Kiev, Odessa, or the dozen smaller bastions scattered across the map. Each feint or strike drains reserves, splits attention, and sows doubt about where the true danger lies. The cost in human terms grows heavier by the day. Fatigue sets in, supplies dwindle, the unknown gnaws at even the toughest units, eroding resolve. In this war, morale rivals firepower. The mind itself becomes a battlefield, as critical as any muddy trench or shattered city block. To ignore these changes is to miss the blueprint for future conflicts, whether fought with armies, code, or economic leverage. The rules are shifting, quietly, but with irreversible force. This war is not only about today's struggle. It is about defining who will dictate how future wars are waged, setting the tactics, the technology, and the very meaning of victory. But amidst this transformation, a new kind of uncertainty takes hold. The next move may not come from a missile, but from a line of code or the flicker of a satellite feed. What happens when the rules of war are rewritten? Not with roaring battles, but with silent, invisible blows. Today, it is not thunderous tank advances or desperate infantry charges that tip the scales, but precise strikes against the nervous systems of nations. Success now means entire cities, industries, supply lines, even whole armies, can be paralyzed in a single night, with a level of precision and surprise that was once the stuff of science fiction. We are living through the emergence of weapons like the Burevestnik, a nuclear-powered missile said to possess virtually limitless range. With machines like this, there are no safe corners. Attack vectors become impossible to predict, and the old shields, those traditional air defenses, risk becoming useless in the blink of an eye. This is not just an update in hardware, it is a seismic shift in the balance of power and the very logic of deterrence. Western analysts now grasp the depth of the challenge. A new arms race is already underway, and the rulebook written over decades is fast becoming obsolete. Those who cannot adapt risk being outmaneuvered, not just in the trenches, but in the shadowy arenas of geopolitics, intelligence, and national security. Yet, the fallout goes far beyond military rivalry. The breakneck advances in drone warfare and radical propulsion technology are already bleeding into civilian life. What starts as an innovation for conflict often ends up redefining how we generate energy, move goods, or even reach for the stars. The line between military and civilian breakthroughs is vanishing at a dizzying pace. Beneath this technological revolution is a psychological one. Once, threats wore uniforms and traveled in columns. Now, both soldiers and civilians live with the knowledge that the most lethal dangers are unseen. A drone circling overhead, a silent digital incursion, a missile that can loiter for days. The anxiety is real, shaping how societies brace themselves, how leaders make choices, and how ordinary people trust the invisible systems running their daily lives. The stakes could not be higher. Societies that recognize and adapt to this new reality will shape the century ahead. Those who cling to old doctrines may find themselves powerless, unable to defend or project influence in a world transformed overnight. But can we cut through the noise and truly learn from these shifts before the next crisis makes the lessons all too clear? The lessons of Ukraine's Eastern Front are not just for generals or politicians. They are a warning and a map for anyone who wants to survive and thrive in the age of invisible war. How do you survive, let alone thrive, when the ground beneath you keeps shifting? The war in Ukraine's east is no longer a simple clash of armies. It has become a proving ground for strategy, resilience, and relentless adaptation. What happens there, measured in hard-fought meters and shattered supply lines, offers lessons for anyone facing fierce competition or rapid change. Forget the cinematic charge. The true victors in war and in life are those who apply steady, unyielding pressure. Every advance of a few hundred meters, every bridge cut or rail sabotaged, quietly shifts the balance. It is the slow, grinding accumulation, not flashy victories, that builds enduring advantage. In business, politics, or your own ambitions, the grind matters far more than the spotlight moment. Disruption now outweighs confrontation. Precision strikes on infrastructure, power grids, railways, depots, are not random chaos. They are calculated moves to cripple the enemy's logistics, erode morale, and stifle their ability to adapt. If you can undermine your rivals' networks, disrupt their flow of resources, or sow confusion, you win long before a decisive battle even begins. Adaptability is the new currency. Both Ukrainian and Russian forces are forced to pivot constantly in response to unexpected tactics and emerging technology. Those who cling to yesterday's playbook, no matter how successful it once was, get left behind. Today, survival demands agility, a willingness to change course the instant the situation shifts. Technology has become the new high ground. It does not just support the fight, it defines it. Drones, electronic warfare, logistics apps, cyber attacks. Whoever invests soonest and learns fastest sets the tempo for everyone else. This arms race is not confined to the front lines. It is rewriting the rules in every sector, from finance to education. If you are not advancing technologically, you are ceding ground by default. And most of all, the future rewards those who can read the early signals. The world's greatest shifts rarely arrive with fanfare. They start as faint patterns, a supply chain disrupted here, a new tactic there, long before headlines catch up. Those who spot these signals and act gain leverage. Those who wait for the crisis are already behind. Apply these lessons, and you seize the strategic initiative, in business, in leadership, or in navigating an uncertain world. Ignore them, and you risk irrelevance, just as any army starved of fuel or ammunition slips into defeat. So, as Ukraine becomes the crucible of modern conflict, the question is not just what happens next on the battlefield, but how you will adapt to a world that no longer plays by the old rules. But adaptation is not just about survival, it is about shaping the future. The next moves, both on the front lines and far beyond, will determine who writes the new rules of power. The true front line does not run through Donbas alone. It runs through your assumptions, your willingness to adapt, and your grasp of what tomorrow may bring. What unfolds in eastern Ukraine is not simply armies colliding, but a quiet war of vision and nerve. The real contest is over who can interpret the unseen signals, who can spot the subtle shifts before they become irreversible. Power here is won through pressure that rarely makes headlines. Sabotaged railways, darkened power plants, disrupted logistics. Each silent blow chips away at the opponent's ability to respond, to innovate, or even to endure. Victories are not measured in territory captured, but in the slow paralysis of the adversary. What appears stagnant is, in truth, relentless, an unceasing grind that decides the shape of the future. Every small targeted act accumulates, until one side finds itself outmaneuvered by 1,000 invisible cuts. This conflict is not built for spectacle. It is engineered for permanence. Each deliberate move is a lesson for every future battlefield, from drones and jamming to psychological tactics and the quiet seizure of information. The new rules of war are not only drafted on the front line, but in energy grids, data centers, and the algorithms that steer public opinion. If you are waiting for sweeping, cinematic events, you will miss the real transformation. The winners are not those who rely on brute force, but those who adapt first. Those who understand that disruption and patience now outweigh shock and awe. Complexity is the new currency of victory. Those who cling to the old playbook risk being left behind in a world they no longer recognize. For you, the stakes are immediate. Understanding these new rules means glimpsing the future, seizing opportunities and shielding yourself from the shocks to come. The balance of power, the rules of business, even the technologies that shape your daily life are all in motion. Ignore these signals, and you risk waking up in a world that has quietly moved on without you. So ask yourself, are you just following the news, or are you tracing the deeper patterns of change? Because the next chapter is already being written, and it will not pause for anyone who refuses to move.